welcome to the fourth episode of Surprisingly Even podcast. My name is Judith, and this podcast is about knitting, which is my hobby and favorite thing to do. I live and knit in Toronto, Canada, and can be found on Ravelry as Judith and Julia. If you are a returning viewer, thank you very much for joining me again. Your continued interest and support mean a lot to me and are greatly appreciated. If you are new to this podcast, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you to my knitting world. Please make yourself comfortable. I have a lot of exciting knitting content to share with you today, but before we dive into that, I would like to show you a very special knitted object that was instrumental in creation of this podcast. Those of you who have watched the very first episode of Surprisingly Even, and if you didn't, you totally should. It was absolutely riveting, and it's available on YouTube for review and pleasure, so please check it out. So those of you who did, you may recall the backstory behind the podcast name. In short, my daughter Leah tried her hand in knitting and she produced a scarf, and when I looked at her work, I remarked that her stitches looked surprisingly even. She remembered that comment, and when I asked her, when I floated the idea of having a knitting podcast of my own and asked her what I should call it, because I did not necessarily want to use the word knitting in the name of the podcast, she said, "Why don't you call it Surprisingly Even?" So surprisingly even it is. Here is the scarf behind the name. The yarn is a quite heavyweight alpaca, and it feels very soft and luxurious. So this was supposed to be a scarf, but because I guess we were quite ambitious, so we cast for it to be quite wide. We ran out of yarn, so it wasn't quite long to become a full-blown scarf. We attempted to make it into a cowl by adding these buttons to the ends of it, and this is how it looks now, the way it's meant to be worn. Let me show it to you. So as you can see, it's not quite long to be a scarf, and it's a bit too long to be a cowl. She may not wear it as much as, as I would like. Still, it's very much treasured. It has sentimental value because of, being the first knitted object that Leah produced. So she keeps it stored carefully away in her closet. And I was thinking about frogging it and making something that she would actually wear. Now, since this is an official mascot of the podcast, so to speak, it may be protected under some sort of mascot protection act. I don't know. Yeah, so in case you were curious, this is the object that inspired the name of the podcast. Really, really soft. I really like this yarn. I can't remember what it was, but I'm quite sure it was alpaca. And now to the knitting content, starting with garments. So in the garments department, we have a finished object, and those of you who watched the last episode, you probably can guess what it is. I'm actually wearing it. So here it is. If you can't recall, this is a Rhea cardigan patterned by Pam Allen, and I made it out of Kestrel. So this is the yarn that the pattern was written for, and it's an organic linen yarn by Quince & Co. with quite an interesting construction as quite a thick chain. I am actually really, really pleased with how this cardigan turned out. As you may recall from the last episode, I wasn't sure how it was going to fit. I thought maybe it was going to be a bit too big, but the fit is actually perfect. And let me just show it to you. It's not big at all. It's actually perfect. Just the right amount of ease for my taste, and just the right length, both in the body and in the sleeves. And I really, really like how it drapes. One detail you may want to notice is that how there is no rolling in the edge, which tends to be a common problem with stockinette stitch sweaters. So you usually need to add like a wide ribbing or do some sort of tricks towards the end of the body to prevent the rolling. In this case, there is no rolling whatsoever, and there was minimal blocking. So actually, this sweater, I haven't washed or blocked it just yet, just because it wouldn't dry in time, and I really wanted to wear it for this episode. So this hasn't been blocked or washed. It was just slightly steamed but there is no rolling whatsoever, and I'm pretty sure this is because of how the yarn is constructed. Let me just some finishing remarks about the pattern. As I mentioned before, this is a bottom-up knitted cardigan. It's quite simple, and I think it provides a great fit. This was the first time I did this kind of sleeve construction, when you basically extend the sleeve from the body quite a bit or just a little bit by casting out a bit of stitches, and then pick up the stitches around the edge and just continue down. And I was worried about the fit because I really don't like pullovers with somewhat like excess fabric around here. This doesn't do that. So it fits quite well, and the sleeves are quite close, and this is the way the pattern intended. So I didn't make any changes to this. So in terms of the fit is perfect. So if you're looking for this type of cardigan construction, I can highly recommend this pattern. I also quite like the fact that it has these interesting detail going around the front panels, and in the back the same kind of motif is repeated, which is not overly complicated but provides a lot of visual interest, and also it's quite welcome break from seemingly endless stockiness, so prevents kind of dying from boredom. So this was good. And also the other thing that I really liked is the fact that the panels are made at the same time with the body, so saves you the trouble of picking up like a lot of stitches and knitting all the way around at the end. So when you're done, you're done. And I really like this kind of design. Plus, this pattern was obviously made with the Kestrel yarn in mind, so it minimizes the finishing kind of aspects that would be tricky with this kind of yarn. For example, I can't quite imagine how I would be doing like something like buttonholes with Kestrel. I'm pretty sure it's possible, but I think for me personally it would be difficult to make them look neat. So yeah, a great pattern with minimal finishing, written specifically with Kestrel in mind. But should you wish, I'm pretty sure this could be knitted with the heavier, like worsted weight merino or something like that. But you may need to change how the bottom is done, because you may experience tendency to roll with another type of yarn, just because the ribbing at the bottom is quite minimal. So this yarn is quite unique in its construction and the visual effect you get by working with it. So, and what I mean by that, it creates quite a unique type of fabric that I didn't quite experience with any other type of yarn I had worked before. If a pattern is written specifically for Kestrel, it would be quite challenging to find a substitute to achieve the same result. One such example of such a pattern is a top by Layla Rabi called This Chain, and I'm hoping I'm pronouncing it right. And it was the pattern part of the same collection as Rhea Cardigan, which was Linen Noir by Quince & Co. I really wanted to make that one as well, so it was kind of a toy cost because between this one and that. That specific top is a really kind of visually striking statement piece, but I felt that I will get more wear and use with Rhea Cardigan because it would fit my wardrobe better. Still not precluding myself from making This Chain top by Layla Rabi. I'm terribly sorry if I'm mispronouncing the name. And if I do decide that, I would have to work with Kestrel. So not my favorite yarn to work with, like sensory wise, but definitely not excluding the possibility of working with it in the future. So stay tuned. My next project in the garments department is going to be the Lattice or Braid pullover by Ririko. As I mentioned last time, I haven't had a chance to cast it on just yet. It will be going on my needles this weekend, and I'm really excited about it because, let's face it, what could be more awesome than starting a new project? And the yarn I'll be using is this yarn, which you have seen multiple times on the podcast as well. And this is Yak Singles by the Wool Barn. Next time you see it, it's going to be a whip, and let's see how far I can get with this one in a week, given everything else that's going on in my knitting life. In the shawls department, very excitingly, we do have a finished object this week, and that's the Time Trade shawl by Caitlin Hunter that I have been working on for the last few weeks. So it's done and finished, and let me just show it to you first before I talk about it. So here it is in all its glory. All the wonderful colors merging into each other, from darker to lighter to more colorful. And as you can see, it's quite big. It has been blocked, all the ends have been weaved, and it's absolutely stunning. I believe it's just right size for a wrap. It's not too big, not too small. This is how it would fit around the shoulders and body. Leia has seen it already. She couldn't be happier with the results, so I have a extremely satisfied customer, which is always such a great thing to kind of accomplish. So let me just talk a little bit about the yarn. As you may recall, I made this out of a kit purchased, and I believe the kit was created by the designer. So those were sold by the Naughty Lamb online store, and the kit consisted of a set of 5 mini gradient by Sweet Georgia, party of 5, and 2 skeins of variegated slash gradient yarn. One merino single by Primrose Yarns, and the other one is BFL, 80% BFL, 20% nylon, Rocky Mountain Pearls by The Farmer's Daughter. I was a bit concerned, as you may recall, because of their different fiber composition and thread construction with these 2 yarns. One is merino singles, the other one is applied BFL. But I don't think I have anything to worry about because they work together quite well, and the blocking wasn't an issue. So yeah, I believe the primary consideration for putting this kit together was how the colors work together, not necessarily achieving the same kind of monogamous composition of fiber and thread type. The colors would work together beautifully, no complaints there. And I quite liked working with these 2 yarns, so I may be using them in the future for other projects. The gradient set was just okay. I wasn't blown away. There's nothing special I can mention about it, rather than when I was working with the darkest color, it was coming off on my hand, so I was a bit worried how it's going to behave once I soaked the shawl. I didn't want it to translate into or bleed into any of the lighter colors, but that didn't happen. I was careful. I changed the water a few times, so I don't think that was an issue. One thing to say about the pattern is that the byproduct of all this beautiful striping is a lot of ends that you have to weave at the end. So I spent all morning doing just that, and just out of curiosity I counted how many ends I had to weave for the shawl, and it was 56. So yeah, 56 ends to weave, and I mean the result is well worth it. But this is a big reason why my next shawl is going to be a 1-color design, and that's going to be a Mucha pattern by Layla Rabi, and it was part of the Quince & Co 2017 shawl collection. So I just noticed that I'm saying Quince & Co a lot, and Layla Rabi name comes up, so there's a theme seems to be going on. I will be making the shawl out of this yarn that I hand dyed myself. As you can see, I'm still to cake it, and so my Swift and Winder are right there waiting for the action. That's going to happen right after I finish recording this episode. So 2 new exciting cast-ons are going to be happening this weekend. One for the pullover and one for the shawl. I mean, I feel like I'm about to enter a knitter's paradise, so we'll be reporting next time on how these 2 will go. One thing I have to deal with after finishing the Time Straight shawl is leftovers. I don't like to waste yarn, so I have a little bits of pieces of the gradient set left, but there's nothing much I can do with those. But these 2 have quite a bit left out of the merino single skein, and it's a beautiful color. So will probably be a hat. I don't think it's enough to make a scarf, and I can't think of any combination of a multicolor shawl. Maybe I should let it kind of stay in the back burner in my brain. Maybe it will come up with something. For now, the simplest way to deal with this is a hat. This one may not quite be enough for a hat, but yeah, we'll have to think of something. This could also like feed my blanket, but it's quite a few squares in this one, if you ask me. So I'm wondering if it can become, if there's still potential for it to become something more meaningful. Not that the blanket square is not meaningful, but it just seems like quite a lot. So we'll see. Next, I'm going to talk about hats. And in the hats area, we do not have a finished object this week, but we have a cast on. As I promised last time we spoke, I started working on a hat using leftovers from the Fade Sweater. This is Hedgehog Fibers sock yarn. The colorway is Crybaby, and I really like it. It's just such a happy color. This would make a beautiful hat for a young girl. Here it is. So I'm using the Altair Cap pattern by Jared Flad. The pattern is written for a two color work type of hat. In this case, it's going to be one color. I really like the shape of that hat, so it's going to be a one color hat based on Altair Cap pattern. I finished the ribbing. I did like 20 rows of twisted rib. I like the look of twisted rib. I think it looks neater. I sometimes have trouble making my rib looking as neat as I would like, so I usually default to twisting it, at least the knit stitches, and I think it does make a difference in that sense. So just started on the stockinette portion. One thing to note, I'm using this hat to test drive the brand new pair of the wooden needles that I was showing last time in the treasure segment, and these are Licky needles. They are called driftwood. The ribbing was done on metal 2.5 just because I don't have Licky in that size, and now I transferred to 275 size Licky. I knitted precisely one row with these, so I can't quite form an opinion just yet. My initial impression is that they do not to be as sticky as I would expect wooden needle to be, and I like the tip. It's not, it's sharp enough, and at the same time it has this really rounded kind of ending that kind of, I feel it's ideal for working with a yarn that tends to be somewhat splitty, and hedgehog fiber sock can be quite splitty. So far so good. The cable actually a bit on the stiff side, so may not be ideal for magic looping. In this case, I don't think it's going to be an issue because it's long enough, probably longer than it should be for a hat of this size. It's a 40-inch needle, like cable kind of length size. The fact that it's a bit longer than it should be allows me to create loops that are big enough and don't require me to kind of bend it in a way that may cause a permanent kind of crinkle in the cable. So I will continue working with these and let you know how it goes. So this is the hat, and the next hat I will be working on is probably something to do with the leftovers I was just showing. Not quite sure what I'm going to do with those yet. In general, I believe hats are my favorite objects to make, in a sense that it's an instant gratification type of a project. It's quick, and they typically take the least amount of yarn of any other types of project you can think of. But I'm getting into the habit of just making hats just for the sake of it. Either I want to use up the yarn, or I need something quick to work on as a kind of palette cleanser. So I have begun accumulating a number of hats that I made with no particular recipient in mind. So I was starting to think what to do with those. So maybe I have this idea or image when I show up to Christmas party with just a bag of hats and just start throwing them into the crowd, like all 5 of them. So I hope it's not going to come to that, and I hope all of my hats will find a loving home and with people who will appreciate and love and wear them and make good use of them. Okay, so these were hats, and now I want to briefly talk about mittens. With mittens, we have a half-finished object, and here it is. This is, I believe I showed it last time, but it may have been like up to like here. Somewhere here, and I finished the first one. This is a right hand mitten, and I started on the second one, just finished the ribbing and starting the portion with the pattern, the pattern is called Sidenma. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing it right. Sidenma mittens by Hannah Levaniemi. These are literally flying off the needles. I'm usually stay away from using this expression, but in this particular case, it's quite appropriate. This is the fastest knitting mitten pattern I've ever done. So if you're looking for something like a quick gift kind of knit in worsted weight, I can definitely recommend it. And I believe it's a free pattern on Ravelry, which is always kind of amazing. And I quite like the construction of the gusset here. So, and the fit is perfect. started on the second one, and the second one has to be done pronto. So the fact that it's a quick knit is a huge bonus in this case, because I'm already dying to cast on my next project, which is going to be, as you may have guessed, the next pattern in Skein Deer's Mitten Club. I believe it's called Mebonden. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing it right. And I'm going to make it out of this yarn. I believe I showed it before. It's by Blue Sky Fibers. It's called Woodstock worsted weight, but I think it's a bit thinner than worsted because the pattern is calling for decay, and I think it should be fine. And this is Red Rock, and this color is called Driftwood. So I'm extremely excited about that pattern. I can't wait to start on it, and the plan is for me to finish this either today or tomorrow, and then this is going on my needles as soon as Sid and Mom mittens are done. Really excited about it. Can't wait to finish them and show them to you. So next time this will either be a finished object, or maybe I'm being too ambitious with my plans, or at least a work in progress. And we are done with mittens. Next on the program is socks. You've seen these before. These are Mercury socks by Kin Mackenzie, free pattern on Ravelry. I was really hoping to be done with them, but with the concentrated push to finish both Rhea and Time Trade Shawl, they just didn't get the love they may have deserved. So here's where they are. And the reason I'm showing them to you like this is no other than I wanted to show off my brand new sock blockers. So encroaching on the treasury segment there. So I did not have sock blockers before, but I procured a pair. So here they are, and here the Mercury sock, and this, as you can see, it's a perfect fit. Anyway, I'm really close to finishing them, so they better be finished next time we talk. There's a bit of a snag. I have run out of the main color sooner than I had expected, so this is like all I have left. So I will be forced to start on the toe, which will be done in this contrasting color. The toe may end up being a bit proportionally bigger than would be ideal. So, but I don't think there's a way around it really. And this is one downside of working top down, because if you have limited kind of yarn. Because had I been doing them bottom up, then I would have just did a shorter leg and would have been just fine. But I think it will be fine regardless. I mean, if the toe will be bigger, who cares? They're still beautiful, and they fit really well so far. So next time, finished object, I promise it better be, okay? This is how the second one looks, dangling here. These are the socks. And now, last but not least, object that I'm working on. Backed by popular demand, the crowd pleaser, as you may have guessed, it's the blanket. I didn't talk about it, I mean, you didn't see it on the last episode, and that was purely accidental oversight on my part. I did talk about it, but it didn't make it into the footage somehow, so mental note to self, not to forget to hit the record button before you talk, provided you want the content to make it into the finished episode, that is. So let me show you where I am with the blanket. I didn't make a lot of progress, but I made some. So I'm working on this row now, and as you may recall, the way I grow it is not like kind of horizontally row by row, but rather going from the corner out. This is the latest kind of row of squares I've been working on. So this one is a leftover from the Fade Sweater. It says Daydream color, a hedgehog fiber sock. This is very interesting yarn. It's Dandelion by Madeline Tosh. It's a merino mixed with linen. And I did produce a pullover out of it at some point. It was a Sabella pattern, and it's actually quite beautiful. I may wear it next time I podcast. I should probably wear it more frequently. I love that one. This is one of Vanessa's minis. I don't quite know what it is. It looks like it's merino, it's singles. And this could be one of the colors she used for her Stephen West Exploration Station shawl, which was absolutely gorgeous. This was also Vanessa's. I believe this was the yarn she may have dyed by herself using turmeric. if I'm not mistaken, and I kind of ran out, had to supplement, but it works really well together with the other color. This is the latest one that I'm currently working on, and I really love this color. I should ask Vanessa what this is. It has all these pinks and burgundy and blue and gray. It's really quite beautiful. I think I may be buying some of this at some point in the future. And I thought at first it was one of the colors she may have been using for her fade sweater, but then I know she's doing her fade out of Marina, and I'm pretty sure this is BFL because of how it feels, which makes me like it even more. Anyway, this, you may see this in one of the treasure updates in the near future. We'll see. Okay, so the blanket is growing, and it's turning out quite nicely. It's getting bigger, not as portable anymore, but I guess that's what I wanted, and we'll keep on working on it, and all of my projects will be supplying plenty of leftovers to be put into this. So couldn't be happier with it. My guilty pleasure in terms of knitting, because it is quite a bit of a distraction from other things, but I don't think anything that makes me happy, I don't want to call it a distraction. I want to call it as something that makes me happy. So coziest memories blankets is one of these things. Okay, so this is where I am with my knitting. So the treasure today consists of three things. One of a yarny nature, and the other two are not yarn. So the first one is, you've already seen, as the sock blockers that I showed you before with my Mercury socks. So this is the only kind I have so far. I have no frame of reference as far as sock blockers go. I think they're fine, and we'll see how they work out in the future. Another object that I've recently added to my knitting, in addition to sock blockers, I also acquired a gleaner, which is this tool that's supposed to help you with removing pills from your sweaters and other knitting objects. I heard a lot of good stuff about it, so I ordered one of my very own. Haven't tried it yet. It comes in this kind of a bag with spare, I think you can call these things like kind of blade type of things. So I'm pretty sure it's gonna come in handy winter time, when you wear your sweaters a lot and sometimes they tend to pill. So I'll be using it, and I'll let you know how this is working. But this is something that I had wanted for a long time, and here it is now. In the yarny goodness area, I've added to my stash this yarn. It's called Aaron Moore Light by the Fiber Company. The specific reason I bought it, you may recall, I'm in a search of the perfect yarn to make the anniversary. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, because I think it's the French version of the word anniversary. Anyway, I'm gonna call it anniversary. I'm pretty sure you know what I mean. Anniversary cardigan by Vera Valimaki from the Pom Pom magazine. One of the yarns I already auditioned for that cardigan is Cumbria. And this is the yarn that I'm making the mitten from, as you may recall. And I really like Cumbria, so I went on the website just to check what kind of colors they have, with the thought maybe ordering a quantity that would be enough to make the anniversary cardigan. The only reservation I have about using that yarn for the anniversary cardigan project is the fact that it would be I think it may be more heavy than I would like, because it's a long cardigan, it's cabled, so the yarn needs to be a bit lofty to kind of, because I don't want to weigh me down or be too heavy to pull the weight of the cardigan down. So, and then as I was checking out Cumbria colors, I saw this yarn as well by the Fiber Company. It's Tweedy, it's DK weight, it comes in 100 grams with skeins with incredible yardage of 300 meters. So who could resist that? But again, before I commit making something big out of it, I wanted to try it out in a smaller skein project. I'm not sure what it may be yet. I have a couple of ideas. So I ordered 3 skeins in the colors that I thought may work for the anniversary cardigan. This color, let's call it like ivory white kind of thing, and this dark gray and the blue. Now when these arrived, I noticed that the blue is a bit thicker than the rest, so I thought, that's interesting. But today I looked at it again, and while these ones are more light, this one is just more. So it's a heavier weight yarn, so I may either exchange it, send it back and ask them to send me what I actually ordered, or may find a home for it in some sort of an accessory. So we'll see. I love the colors. I realize now that this yarn is not as drapey as I had thought it would be, just from reading what it's composed of, and the content is quite luxurious. It's 80% wool, 10% silk, and 10% cashmere. It's quite tweedy. It reminds me a lot of Brooklyn tweed, especially when the weight that's not light, the regular Iron More. It's a lot like Shelter, but a bit softer. I have a couple of ideas of what I want to do with these. One is, in her recent Instagram post, Melanie Berg indicated she's working on a shawl design in 3 colors using this exact yarn. I'm like, wow, that's like universe is telling me something, and this is meant to happen. The other idea I have, I may make a kid-size pullover for one of my nephews. He has a birthday coming up in November, so I'm gonna think about it some more, and we'll let you know how the plans will develop for this yarn in the future. But I'm really looking forward to working with it. It feels really rusticy and soft at the same time. It doesn't have that bite that rustic yarns sometimes have. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I'm totally okay with a bit scratchiness in the yarn, but this is something different. So I'm really quite curious how this is gonna work. Not quite sure this would work for the anniversary cardigan, because I don't think it would be drapey enough for that particular pattern, but I guess I'll know better once I have a chance to work with this yarn and see how it behaves. So the search for the perfect yarn for anniversary cardigan continues. I hope by the time I find the perfect yarn, I'll still want to make it. So this is where we are with the treasure this week. So this is pretty much everything I wanted to talk about this week. Thank you very much for listening and watching. I am really excited about the new projects I'm about to start this weekend, and can't wait to share with you the progress that I make next time we talk, hopefully in a week. I wish you all a great weekend. Enjoy the rest of the summer weather. Those of you who are knitters, happy knitting. Those of you who are not just yet, please give some serious thought. Picking up knitting as a hobby is wonderful and awesome, and I promise you'll have a lot of fun. Happy knitting. See you next time.